and welcome to I'll Knit If I Want To. I'm Andrea Mowry of Drea Renee Knits, and I'm going to answer some questions. Today I am wearing my hand spun DRK everyday sweater because I just have not had much time for spinning and I miss it. So I thought, let's wear some hand spun. I'm still working away on, I think I told you all at some point, I know I did. I am doing this like mashup of, I've got a bat from Artifacts of Appreciation, and then I have two braids from Hello Yarn, and I'm going to use each one as a ply, and it's going to be interesting. I wish I had my bobbins up here actually. They're downstairs, the two I finished. I'm on my last one. I have started. Apparently I'm just jumping right into some spinning talk, but then I promise I'm going to answer some knitting questions. I'll keep this brief. But, oh no, I forgot what I was going to say. Shoot. Oh, so, you know, we're only going to get to do what we make time for, right? And so I know right now, every day I like look longingly at my wheel and I'm like, I just want to spin, but I'm so busy and I feel like I'm behind, which is all self-imposed. You know, it's funny how when you own your own business, it's like you're just always working and you're always behind because it's all, you impose it all on yourself. But I started today, actually. I was like, I'm setting my timer, and the first 10 minutes of my coffee, I am gonna spin, and then I'll get into work. So it was lovely, and I'm like, all right, 10 minutes at a time, I'm gonna get this one done. But I'm pretty excited because the bat, I just kind of, you know, spun. Not a whole lot of preparation goes into like spinning the bat. You know, the bat was prepared for me. But the first braid, I basically like stripped it down into a million tiny bits, like as much as I could vertically, and then spun all those end to end. But for this last braid, I'm actually just spinning the whole thing across, so I'm not stripping it down at all. So this will have much longer color transitions compared to the really short ones of the other braid I did. So I don't know what'll happen. We're gonna see. I'm excited. All right, but let's start answering some questions. I already told you what I was wearing. I'll throw a link to that below. But yeah, question number 1. I am a fairly new knitter. I've played around over the years, but since Christmas, sorry, I think I got fiber fuzz on my lip. Okay. Ever since Christmas, when I found your patterns on Ravelry, I have delved in hook, line, and sinker and haven't looked back. I'm having so much fun. Yay! My question is this: is changing yarn weights to meet gauge an acceptable option? I'm a very tight knitter, apparently, as I have to go up 2 needle sizes with each of your patterns that I have tried. I'm currently looking at the Weekender Light, and I'm wondering if I get gauge with a DK weight, could I just go that route instead of changing needle size? So I had to think about this before I started, and now I'm like, was I thinking about it right? So here's the thing with trying to change yarn weight to get gauge. If you are a tight knitter, then am I thinking about this right? Y'all will let me know. If you're a tight knitter and you go from a fingering weight up to a DK, then when you knit that at a tight enough gauge to get gauge for the pattern, you're probably going to end up with a really dense fabric. So there are times when I would say, yeah, you can play around a little bit with yarn weight to get gauge for sure, because especially if you're substituting yarns, all yarns tend to be a little bit different from each other. And so, and there's not really clear-cut guidelines on how people label their yarn. in my experience. So, you know, we will see, I could pull out 5 different skeins of fingering weight yarn from my stash right now, and some of them, all of them would be listed as fingering weight, and some of them would be 100 grams, some of them would be 115 grams, some would be 100 grams with like 400 yards, others would be 100 grams with like 375 or 425, or, you know, there's this wiggle room that happens. So I think if you are only adjusting that yarn weight by like a little bit, then you might be fine, like sport weight. If you were trying to sub a sport weight for a fingering weight, I think you'd probably be fine as long as you are getting gauge. But all of this boils down to what's really important is that you're getting the fabric you like. So if you get gauge but you don't like the fabric, then I would try changing yarn weight and or needles to try and get gauge with different yarn and needles that will get you a fabric you like. I hope that made sense. But my gut reaction to going all the way up to a DK weight for that fingering weight sweater is that your fabric's going to be super, super dense. Some people like a stiffer look to their fabric. Not all of us want a lot of drape. But it's just something to really consider is how, you know, the Weekender is a boxy style drop shoulder sweater. It's meant to be worn with about 10 inches of positive ease. And you do need some drape so that when your arms are down, it falls and drapes in a really nice style. So there you go. All right, question number 2. I love how this has just become my little pet, by the way. I mean, it's really delightful. You talked about getting the first sleeve right and then the second goes more easily, or the first sock, etc. I have seen that some knitters knit the 2 pieces side by side at once. Have you tried this? Your comments on that method? So yeah, I've tried 2 at a time. You can definitely do it for socks and for sleeves. I know some people love it. It's the only way they do it. I don't do it. I guess for one, because I do always think about like my first one is my thinking one, and then I just get to breeze through the second because I've already figured everything out. That's probably also because that goes into my design process, right? Like a lot of times, so I design on the needles. I write the pattern as I'm knitting it. I don't just write myself the pattern and then follow the pattern to knit my sample. I sit there with like my notebook and my knitting and I jot down notes. When I first started, I'd actually always have my laptop next to me because I was so scared of like missing any little thing. I'd like row by row type out what I just did. So for me, I am often like, I'm on the sleeve right now of this year's Ride Back sweater, really excited. And I had to make decisions all along the way. How do I want to space out these decreases so that they can stay in pattern? How long do I want the sleeve to be? You know, there's a lot of design decisions that were going into it. So that might just be why I don't generally do 2 sleeves or socks at a time. I definitely would not do 2 sleeves at a time going for a top-down sweater because it would drive me bonkers dealing with that whole sweater body and 2 sleeves and their separate balls of yarn. I just would not enjoy that. But I can definitely see how somebody, if it was a bottom up sweater and you knit the sleeves first, I could see doing that. It's totally personal preference. I think it's great for the people that enjoy it because you get through the sleeves of your socks and you're done. You don't have to cast on another one. So if you like it, then you should do it. I even have a book from way back in the day. Oh, I'm just so curious. Whoop! Don't take out your cords, Andrea. So, is it still up here? Oh, it's not. I must have moved it to a different shelf. I have somewhere the 2 socks at a time book. There was a book back in the day. Like I probably bought it, I don't know, 15 or more years ago, like way back in the day. But yeah, there's a whole book on doing socks that way. So, excuse me, I'm a little snuffly. I got hit with a little cold this week. Okay, next question. Question number 3. I'm brand new to knitting, started in January. Congratulations. We're so happy to have you. And I knitted a sweater for my father, but it's limp and doesn't have enough structure to be flattering. Do you think there is something I can do, like reknitting it with smaller needles to get stiffer fabric, or adding a thread of another yarn to help? Or do I just need to find another pattern for my yarn and another yarn for my pattern? For reference, the yarn is Fill Tweed from Fildar. It's 50% acrylic, 30% wool, and then some alpaca silk and rayon. And they used 6mm needles. So I actually did some research on this because I was like, oh, I'm so curious. It's really hard not seeing the sweater. I don't know. Like I kind of need to look at it, even touch it to be like, oh, what would I do to adjust this? But I did find that yarn. I don't know if it's sold much here in the US. This seems, I couldn't find any stores near me that sold it. But I was able to find some online. What I'm really curious about is what the yarn weight is. I don't know if they offer it in multiple weights or just one, so I just kind of had to guess. So I did find, I forgot I wrote a little note over here. Whoops. All right, I'm making messes. Okay, so you say that you knit it on 6mm needles, which for those of us, sorry. Okay, I just am tangled. Okay, hold on, almost done. Okay, let's try again. If I was fancy, I would just edit all that out, but you just get to be here with me like we're hanging out in real life. All right, so for those of us who don't know millimeter sizes, that's a US 10. So that's a pretty big needle. Did I not jot down? Oh, and what I could find, so I actually even had to zoom in on pictures and try and read the yarn label. And from the one I found, its suggested needle size was a 3.5 to a 4mm needle, which I should have this memorized by now. I don't though. So a 3.5mm needle for us is a US 4 for us. For those of us, well, for us, for US, for those of us who are used to the US sizes, is a US 4. So a 4 to a 6. I'm pretty sure 4mm is a size 6 needle, I think. So if they're suggesting 3.5 to 4mm needle and you used a 6mm needle, again in US that would be them recommending a 4 to a 6 and using a 10. So you can see that's quite a jump in sizes. So my guess is that, like, even reading the fiber content of that yarn, I don't think it should necessarily be limp and shapeless. I think it's gauge. I think that it is knit at too loose of a gauge, so it's offering more drape than you or your dad may want for that sweater. So I would recommend definitely going down needle size. What I would be curious about, since you just started knitting in January, is if you are familiar with making sure to get gauge and things like that when starting a pattern and trying to use the yarn weight called for in your pattern. So there's a lot that I would like to be able to ask you and have you so that I had more information, but that's where I would start. I would see what yarn weight did your pattern call for? Is that the same weight as the Fill Tweed? And I'm guessing it called for that needle size, but I would do a gauge swatch. So I would knit like a 10 by 10 centimeter square. Even bigger than that, so you can measure 10 by 10 inside of it to see if you're getting the gauge, because the pattern should tell you how many stitches and rows per like 10 centimeters, 4 inches that you need. So I would kind of just backpedal that way, and then you can decide, okay, is this the yarn I want to use for the sweater? Do I need a different yarn weight? because I do think if it was knitted at a tighter gauge, I wonder if that's going to fix a lot of the issue, but then it's going to totally change the size of that sweater. So that's why I'm kind of asking all those other questions about yarn weight, needle size, and gauge, because they're all pieces of the puzzle. But I hope that at least gets you on your way. If you were meant to be using a thicker yarn, like with a US 10 needle for a sweater, I would be using like an Aran weight yarn, so heavier than a worsted. So if this yarn is only maybe like a DK, even smaller, I mean a 4 to 6 needle, yeah, I would say a DK. Then you could try adding one more strand of another yarn to get you to the right yarn thickness, and that can be a really, really lovely effect. So, all right. Next question. What is your favorite buttonhole to knit for a horizontal 1x1 ribbed button band on a cardigan? So I basically do 2 different buttonhole methods. I either do a yarn over if the buttonholes are small enough for a yarn over. They're just so easy. So either a yarn over, or I do the 1 row buttonhole method. If you just Google it here on YouTube, search for it on YouTube, then you will find, I am sure, a bazillion tutorials. But yeah, those are the 2 I use. So I would just see, it depends on my yarn gauge. It depends on my, shoot, I'm getting a phone call that I have to take. I'm going to pause this here. Okay, hello, I'm back. Sorry about that. Life. I believe I was chatting about buttonholes when I had to take that quick pause, and I think I kind of already said everything about it. I use the yarn over or the 1 row buttonhole. Basically what makes that decision for me is the size of my buttonhole compared to my yarn thickness and the gauge I'm knitting at. So if a yarn over creates a hole big enough to use as my buttonhole for that size button, great. If not, that's when I'll use the 1 row buttonhole generally. So there you go. This last question is very different than one I've received in the past. I'm gonna try my best to answer it. It's been very interesting to watch your career unfold and follow your design evolution. My question is, where do you see yourself or your brand, DRK, 5 years or more from now? What does the future look like for Drea Renee Knits? So that's a great question. One maybe I should put more thought into. I've kind of chatted in the past that this whole business was really a surprise. I did not ever think it would be what it has become. I have definitely told kind of my design story on here in the past, but really it started as a way to be able to keep knitting and to be able to buy yarn. So I didn't expect it to become what it is today. And I've had, while starting this business, I had 2 children, and then also have had some health issues. And so it's just been this kind of whole big evolution that encompasses more than just the business. It's that family life, it's my health, it's the business, and trying to find balance with that and trying to look at it long term. I think one of the hardest things about my business is trying to look at long term, because it's hard to release the fear that comes with the volatility of being in a creative job. You hope people will keep liking what you're creating and putting out there, but there's no guarantee, and there's no market trends or anything that I can reference to be like, okay, will I get to retire someday? There's not a lot of information out there to base things on for this little business of mine. So yeah, the past 2 years, I kind of just hunkered down and tried to figure out that life balance thing, what I needed to do so that my health didn't deteriorate. But now, kind of coming through the other side of the past few years and the pandemic and everything, I know one thing I'm missing is the connection I had through teaching. I really enjoy teaching. I hopefully that comes through in this little weekly, whatever this is, vlog. That I really enjoy talking about knitting and spinning and everything in the fiber world, and I just think there's so much to learn, and I want to learn it, and I love talking to other people who are excited to learn it too. And so I do miss that like actual human connection that I used to get from teaching. I used to teach before the pandemic. I was traveling at least once a month to go teach somewhere. I have thought about kind of starting that up again now that travel is becoming a little more of an option again. But to be honest, I'm afraid to get sick again. I'm afraid to have my health kind of do a backslide. It really took a lot out of me. I pretty much got sick every time I traveled. So I think right now I am trying to figure out how to really connect on a more intimate level with people. Also, it's interesting because when it comes to knitwear design, it takes a long time to do a pattern. I have some patterns that they're more than a year in the making. So it's this really, really slow process. And it also means that you can't share it in real time. There is that kind of wanting to protect your design until it's closer to its release. And there's part of me that would really love to show more of like the entire process, because I don't know how much people know about like how long of a process it is and all this stuff. And I think it's interesting. I don't know, maybe other people would think it's interesting. So right now I'm kind of playing around with trying to figure out how to regain the intimate community factor that I got through teaching and events and going to yarn shops. And also kind of like a way to share things that I can't necessarily with my business share on Instagram to that size crowd, So yeah, I'm just kind of playing around, trying to figure that out. I've toyed with a book a whole lot. But it's hard, again, books are a multi-year process, and I have to still put out the same amount of patterns while I then write twice as much for a book. So yeah, I guess I don't know where this business will be in 5 years. I hope still like it is now, putting out patterns, doing knit-alongs, and finding a way to connect more. I've been toying around with the idea of a Patreon because I think that I could be able to share some more of that design process. I think we could also do some smaller, kind of more intimate, how many times am I going to say that word? Knit-alongs and things like that. It would also potentially help that 5-year plan, right? Of being able to have at least somewhat of a steady income stream. So yeah, thanks for asking that question. I know my answer's all over the place, but it's got me thinking, which is good. It's always fun to kind of think and dream for the future. So I hope that y'all will stick around and we'll see what unfolds. And yeah, I just want to end this one with how grateful I am that y'all come back here and listen to me ramble. I hope that, these questions are helpful. And even if you kind of already know the answer, I hope that either it gives you like a twist, a new way to think about it, or just that it keeps you excited. I don't know. I think that's what I've missed a lot these past few years of the pandemic, is like getting together with your buddies who understand like your obsession with your craft, who just want to talk about knitting, you know? So I just am really grateful that this has kind of provided that for me, because I've really missed it. So, all right, I'm gonna end this here. Gonna figure out how to attach these two videos together since I had to pause in the middle. But yeah, I guess that's all. So I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you get to do some spinning, some knitting, all the good things. Maybe you'll get some sunshine. It is sunny here, and we actually are gonna go to our first baseball game with our kiddos. So we're looking forward to that. So yeah, I will see you next week. Have a great weekend.